Hello, everyone. Before we get started today, let me share. I got three brief stories I'd like to share with you before we begin today's lesson. You know, I'm staying here at your hotel myself as a guest, and I've observed a few things. Let me share those. So I was in your hotel restaurant, and I watched as two guests arrived and were seated. And one of your associates, a hospitality associate, approached them and asked, "Tea or coffee, gentlemen?" And the first guest said, "I'll have tea." And the second guest said, "Well, me too. And be sure the glass is clean." So our associate exits, returns, and says, "Here you are, two teas. Now, who asked for the clean glass?" Another little scene that I caught. Another guest walked up to one of your associates and asked, "Do you serve chicken here?" The associate, with a straight face and the most polite demeanor, responds, "We serve anyone here, sir." Third little thing I caught, kind of a little bit behind the scenes story, more like I heard about it, involving another one of your hospitality associates and their managers, their boss. This associate sits down. It's performance review time. The boss asks, "So, what do you think is your worst quality?" The associate says, "I'm probably too honest." The boss says, "That's not a bad thing. I think being honest is a good quality." The associate replies, "I don't care what you think." Okay, so let me introduce today's topic. Hopefully, you get those stories, those little jokes. They'll be pertinent as we go. They'll be relevant to today's lesson and why we're here. Today's topic: why are we here? The 7% rule. Okay, so no, this is not a class about why do we exist. I mean, why are we here? That's the question. Why are we here inside together, you and me, instead of somewhere else, like at the movies, or taking a nap, or having a tasty meal on the other side of town with friends of yours? Why are we here together, and what are our goals for taking a course titled Perfecting the Art of Communication in the Hospitality Services Industry? Or today's class, today's topic titled Why Are We Here? The 7% Rule. So let's recap and review, okay? Why did I share these three stories with you? Can anyone tell me what went wrong in these three scenes? Anyone? Yes, thank you, that's right. We've just witnessed what are referred to as communication problems, unnecessary blunders, mistakes that made things worse. This is, I believe, why you're all here today, right? Right? We want to avoid problems like these. We want to make things better. We want to be artful and accurate in our communications. We will avoid insulting or scaring our guests away. We'll avoid making our bosses angry with us. We'll avoid calling a guest chicken. We will have you sit down with your boss, unlike that other associate, and perform much better than he did. By the way, he may not have survived that meeting. He may not have survived that day. I don't see him here among you all today. So, instead of creating entirely unavoidable problems, we will have you sit down with your boss. We will have him tell you what a great job you've been doing since taking this communications class. What a great job you've been doing. And we'll have you prepared and in the comfortable position of being able to confidently ask your boss right then and there at that same meeting, "I'd like a raise, please." So, how about that? Who wants to make more money? Hands? Okay, so how are we going to do this? I'm here to try and assist. Let me give you an overview, a preview of our course and today's lesson. Today's class is about establishing our shared goals and about how we will accomplish these goals together. We're here to learn hospitality English. You're here to learn hospitality English. But you may have thought you were here just to learn English. Our goal is more, is greater. We're here to improve your communication skills, towards your understanding, your comprehension skills, your understanding of human behavior, of human interaction, your problem solving abilities, your communication skills, and storytelling. Let me tell you a little story. I was in line this morning at breakfast. I was at the omelet station. I was thinking to myself, so scrambled eggs with bacon, or maybe an omelet with salmon, chopped onions, capers. There were a few people ahead of me. I had some extra time. I had time to think some more. Maybe scrambled eggs with chopped salmon. As you know, there's no real line at the omelet station line. Everyone is near the counter on the other side of the cooks. So I look up from the food selection choices as I'm thinking about what I want to have, and I notice one of the cooks seems really different this morning. He's not smiling. He looks angry, actually. And then I figure out why. One of the two other guests standing beside me is also quite grumpy. This man who's grumpy is a foreigner from North America or South America, maybe. I learn he can speak English because he's raising his voice at the sad-looking cook and says, "No more, no more, enough. Ah, I want that, and that too. No, more, more." He points to some more ingredients. Some of that. No, no, not so much of that. Just some. No, not so much. Less oil. I want less oil. I can see it. I can feel it. The heat between these two, between guest and cook, it is much, much hotter than a flame cooking the man's eggs. So I smile at the cook. I narrow my eyes slightly. I nod, bow my head in the cook's direction, and apologize for the rude guest, who I do not know, by the way. But I do all of this without saying a single word to anyone. Then I smile at the guest. I smile at the man beside him. Maybe a friend, maybe a family member, I don't know. And I ask this other guest, "How are you? Are you from the US too?" This other guest at first acts slightly startled, not expecting to be approached by a stranger, but I keep smiling. And then he begins to respond. He tells me, yes, he's from Texas. He's been here for a few days. He's with family. They're on vacation. They've already been to a number of other cities in China. I look to the other guest and ask the Texan, with just my eyes and a tilt of my head, looking without saying a word, asking, "And him?" "Mm-hmm," says the Texan, who then proceeds to tell me a little bit more about this visit to Beijing, a few of the sightseeing places they've been to in the local area. I notice slowly the heat between the grumpy guest and the grumpy cook has cooled down. I say, looking at none of the three of them, "Man, the language barrier, tough, right?" I look to the foreigners and smile. I say, "I know the Chinese. They try so hard to please us all. Difficult." So the grumpy guest, not so quite as grumpy now, he gets his eggs, the Texan too, shortly thereafter, and the Texan turns his head towards me, smiles, and says, "Have a good day, man." He nods his head in a friendly way, and the two leave the omelet line. So who can tell me what happened here this morning at this story at the omelet station? What do you observe with this story? Anyone? Yes? Okay. So let me try to explain. I've just described a scene that took about, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 minutes. Did you hear how many words were spoken? By me? Not that many, right? Did you get the sense the grumpy guest and the Texan left a lot less angry, a lot less heated? I didn't share, but maybe you got it. The cook, he smiled the biggest smile at me. Here's the lesson. This is somewhat well-known rule. It's known as the 7% rule. This rule is from a writer, Albert Mahabrium, published. He actually attended UCLA in California, where I'm originally raised. He published a book called Silent Messages in 1971. And he lays out in very good detail, and I'll get you a sample of a reading from this book, his rule, which states that 93% of all communication is nonverbal. Only 7% is verbal. only 7% of communication is spoken. The rest is unspoken. 93%. How's that? How's that possible? Well, Mahabrian states that 93% from his research, from his studies, from his observation, accounts for a combination of body language, like facial expression, and tone, such as the musicality of one's voice, the raising and the lowering of tone. This is what I used in the omelet line, mostly nonverbal communication to try to help diffuse a bad situation. No one wound up yelling at someone else. No food was thrown. The cook did not storm off and leave the grumpy guest's eggs to burn till they're black. Sure, none of these three became friends. Sure, well, maybe the two that left together. But things were slightly improved, and things were not allowed to get worse. 7% words, 93% no words. Maybe in this story it was even less than 7%, right? You be the judge of that. Okay, so we're going to have you learn how to communicate, and not just by using English, not just by using words. We're going to have you learn to recognize some human behavior, to recognize some cues about the moods and emotions of others. We're going to have you learn when, sometimes, the best course of action is to say nothing, do nothing, maybe just smile, maybe just nod your head in a friendly, non-aggressive way. We're going to have you speaking better English too, but we're going to have you learn these other important things about communication skills too. So, any questions? Let me begin to wrap up to conclude today's lesson. I'll do this by concluding the story about the omelet station, the grumpy guest, the Texan, the cook, and me. This is a true story, but it didn't happen this morning. It happened earlier this year. But I use it because the story demonstrates a lot about language, about communication, the art of communication, the power of nonverbal communication, the 7% rule. Problem solving is often done with the help of communication. Communication requires understanding, an understanding of people, of situations, of possible solutions. Communication is attitude. It will be our path, your path to success, your path to meeting with your boss to ask for your pay raise. You're going to return returns. You're going to receive and enjoy returns on your investment from taking this course. Hard returns and soft returns. Money and happiness. Is there anyone here who doesn't want any of these? Okay, so the conclusion to the omelet station story. The grumpy guest did not notice and could not tell, but I certainly could. The cook, he was pretending not to understand him about the oil. The cook kept putting more and more oil into the frying pan, even though the guest was shouting no. I'm fairly certain the cook did that on purpose. Come on, he knows what no means, right? We all know what no means. I didn't share this story that you can think of ways to take revenge upon nasty guests. Let's be clear on that, okay? This is not what hospitality is about. We all know this. No, the moral of the story is about the need for good communication skills, better communication and comprehension skills. With these, with the art of communication, which you will become more of a master of, you'll never find yourself in any of these situations. The omelet station story, or any of the stories we started with. The 2 teas and a clean cup. Never refer to a guest as a chicken. And never tell your boss some truth about not caring about what he thinks, okay? Please, never do that. Also, we learned about the 7% rule, and that the 7% rule does not apply to eggs or to oil with eggs. Remember, never be like that grumpy guest. Man, it sure looked like a greasy plate of eggs he walked off with. Okay, any questions?